Here it is. I've been teasing this for a while now. I've mentioned that I wanted to do a video in this series about an album, and I just spent so long trying to figure out the direction I wanted to take on it because I wasn't sure if I wanted to just format it like a conventional review or try to do something a little bit different. I'd say I largely landed in the middle. But now I think I finally have a script ready for this video that I've been teasing for a while. This is the first time in this series that I'm doing a video specifically on an album, and I know a lot of you guys that subscribed are subscribed for music reviews, so hopefully this is something you're interested in. If not, maybe I'll get them next time. For now, welcome back to I Want to Talk About, the series where I take a topic and I sit on camera and I blabber about it. And as you can tell from the title, today I want to talk about the 2022 Taylor Swift album, Midnights. Taylor Swift, I don't need to introduce her. You know who she is. She is perhaps the biggest artist on the planet right now. Her popularity at this point might only be rivaled by that of peak Michael Jackson. I heard one reviewer I watched, I think it was John from ARTV, refer to Taylor Swift as the pop music Thanos. And hey, I think if there's any popular musician today who would have all the Infinity Stones, it's probably Taylor Swift. This was her 10th studio album last year, 12th if you count re-recordings. Again, I'll mention that in a little bit. And leading up to this record, Taylor was most certainly keeping herself busy. After releasing two entirely new albums in 2020 in the form of Folklore and Evermore, Taylor began her journey to re-recording her older albums that were no longer owned by her because of some previous contract disputes. Since 2021, she has released three of them: Fearless, Red, and Speak Now, with a fourth one coming later this year, that being 1989. I would like to point out that the Fearless reissue came out on my birthday this year, so thank you for the birthday present, Taylor. And amidst all this stuff, she decided to take some time out of her busy schedule to give us an entirely new album. This one, the one that I'm going to be talking about in this video. And for me, after listening to Folklore and Evermore, which I thought were fantastic albums, I was suddenly getting pretty interested in Taylor Swift's music, especially after hearing the re-recordings of Fearless and Red back in 2021, and kind of realizing I had missed out on this when I was a pop cynic back in the day who didn't let go of my masculinity enough to actually want to enjoy Taylor Swift. Now that I've said fuck my masculinity, I don't give a damn. I like her music. And I was interested when I heard a new album was coming along because Taylor is someone who is known to reinvent her sound in very drastic ways, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. High reputation. And it also helps that this album had a massive hype cycle behind it. Compared to Folklore and Evermore, which were more surprise release albums, this was announced much further in advance, which meant that fans had a lot more time to prepare for it, and boy did they. Because this record has been an unbelievably big record breaker. Many of you guys probably already know about it, but it's had a huge commercial impact. One of the most impressive things I can say that I saw it do was feature 10 songs in the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. Taylor is the first artist to be able to say that. With the exception of one song having a feature, she pretty much had the entire top 10 to herself. And as if it needed to be reestablished anymore, this record has really continued to reestablish why Taylor is perhaps the biggest artist in the game. And what's also helped reestablish that is the Eras tour that she's been on, which has been so commercially popular that apparently I think I've read that it's actually helped some of the local economies of the areas where Taylor Swift has performed in. It's gotten so big that I believe I've read there is a movie coming out of the tour, and the pre-sale tickets for it have gotten so big that the numbers are surpassing movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, which is one of the highest grossing films ever. Most impressive, as someone who reads about the box office and really enjoys box office numbers, the highest grossing concert film in the box office, at least in the domestic box office, is Justin Bieber's Never Say Never, which made $73 million, and they're already projecting that the Eras Tour movie is going to surpass that in its opening weekend. Yeah, that's pretty damn insane, I would say. I even have a little bit of a personal anecdote as to Taylor Swift. Hopefully you guys will like to hear it. I don't know if it'll help show once again why Taylor Swift is so big or not, but I just thought it was a little fun story to tell. I am from Philadelphia, and I live not super far away from where Taylor Swift performed on her leg of the Eras Tour. she performed at Lincoln Financial Field, the home of the Philadelphia Eagles. Go Birds. And while I'm not the closest to the sports complex, as we call it, I am close enough that if I stay here in my room and there's a sporting event or a concert over there, I can typically hear it from here in my bedroom. And maybe in the backyard, but otherwise that's it. With that said, on the first night of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour performance here in Philly, the Friday night show, it was so loud that I was sitting in my living room and it sounded like she was performing right next door to me. I was practically singing the words to All Too Well right along with her when I was just sitting on the couch watching the Phillies game, because it was that loud, it was that intense. I think I said it before, during, and after the show that if there is anyone who can get the city of Philadelphia louder than the Phillies or the Eagles, it's Taylor Swift. So there you go. There's one of many personal anecdotes you're probably going to end up hearing in this video. Not probably, you're going to be. Get ready. Now, with an album being this commercially successful, you would probably think that it would be one of last year's most critically acclaimed albums, and that it would be across the board beloved by both critics and music fans alike. But in actuality, this was a kind of polarizing record when it first came out. I might even argue that in some circles it still is. Because after Folklore and Evermore moved away from somewhat poppier sounds for a more folk-driven sound that I'd even call indie folk, Taylor started to get a lot more praise and love outside of the pop circle. People who didn't really listen to pop music were really starting to enjoy those albums as well. So I think there was naturally going to be some semblance of eyebrow raising at the thought of Taylor going back to a more traditional pop sound. And with this, she goes back into something of an electro-pop or synth-pop style, but more like a chilled-out dream pop kind of sound that's much more mellow in comparison to some of the other stuff that she had put out before Folklore and Evermore. And it seems like there was some mixed reception to that because there were a lot of people who just found the album a little bit boring. The common thing I heard people saying is that the name Midnights was fitting because they found the album to be kind of mid. And yes, naturally there was still a lot of acclaim for the album, but it seemed like a lot of people felt it was a pretty big step back from Folklore and Evermore. And I mean, on my personal end, I love the album. I honestly might even go as far as to say it's one of my personal favorite Taylor Swift albums. But I do kind of understand in some ways why people were not as crazy about it, because once again, it is a very soft, mellow, chilled out kind of album. But if you're going into this thing expecting bangers, so to speak, on the level of We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, Me, Look What You Made Me Do, songs like that, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Obviously, the album is a bit of a concept record about nocturnal ruminations, late night thinking, and things like that, so it's not exactly going to be a pump up, jump up, and dance kind of record. It's going to be very mellow and light, sounding like the kind of thing that happens when you wake up in the middle of the night. You're in a bit of a tired stupor, but your brain is still racing. Maybe you had a pretty insane nightmare or something, and you just have to make something out of it. Admittedly, some of my love of this album will kind of always be tied to some personal memories in a way, and this is where doing a video for I Want to Talk About might be a little different than a review because of these personal anecdotes I'll get into. But this record also happened to come out at one of my favorite points of my life. The night that this album came out was the same night that the Philadelphia Phillies were in Game 3 of the NLCS. I'm a huge baseball fan. I've mentioned that in many videos before. And I was at that game. It was the first time I had ever been to a playoff baseball game in my life, and it was the most exciting, loud, wild thing I'd ever been a part of. Our left fielder, Kyle Schwarber, hit a leadoff home run, and the crowd just erupted. It was the loudest thing I'd ever gotten to be a part of. I was there with a couple friends, and it was just like so much fun. We all had a great time. I think I've gone as far as to say it may be potentially the best night of my life, if not the best, one of the best. And I remember after they won, joking with my friends that because Taylor Swift is from Pennsylvania, I have to thank Taylor Swift for helping the Phillies win the game that night, and I did thank Taylor Swift. So in a way, there's going to be that bit of personal memory behind it where I'm thinking to myself, okay, this album is tied to one of the best parts of my life. life, one of my favorite times of my life, getting to see the Phillies being in the postseason, and some of the other memories that I had at that time in October of 2022. But even when I take off my nostalgia goggles and sentimentality socks, I still really enjoy this thing, and I think to help further explain why I love this album so much, I have to talk about another album of Taylor Swift's. Please excuse me while I spend a long time talking about something that is not Midnight's, but trust that it's going to help contextualize why I enjoy Midnight so much. The album that I need to discuss right now is Taylor Swift's 2017 album, Reputation. Now, I have to bring this record up because there is once again some personal history with me and this album. I kind of alluded to it with a joke that I made earlier, but Reputation is a record that I personally find to be my least favorite Taylor Swift album. It was actually the first album of hers that I reviewed, and by proxy, the first full album of Taylor's that I actually listened to in its entirety. I've talked about this before, but I didn't really listen to albums much before actually reviewing them. And then once I started reviewing albums in 2017, that's when I obviously would listen to them fully. But before that, I never did. So I missed out on a lot of Taylor Swift's music, and I was still kind of wrestling with the whole idea of I have masculinity, so I shouldn't enjoy Taylor Swift's music, and it would be many years until I realized that's fucking bullshit, just enjoy the music, damn it. And ultimately, when I reviewed this album back in 2017, and I will include the link to that in the description, I was kind of harsh on it. I didn't think it was absolute garbage or anything, I just didn't really like it that much, and I think I said in my original review that I considered the album to just be petty drama for the sake of petty drama, since the record was so heavily focused on Taylor's beef with Kim and Kanye and things like that. I think I even said in my review of her next album, Lover, that I felt like Reputation was the musical equivalent of Crying Over Spilled Milk. Now, I do have to call myself out, of course, and I have to apologize because at the time, I really was not privy to the details of the whole Kim and Kanye thing. I hadn't realized anything that had gone on. I didn't really take much time to look into the celebrity drama or gossip, so I didn't realize everything that had happened. I think I had an inkling of an idea that Kanye did something stupid because he is known to do many stupid things, but I don't think it really clicked with me just how bad it was for Taylor. And my mindset at the time was just, wait a minute, this drama or this beef happened in 2016 and now she's talking about it on an album a year later. It felt at the time like she was trying to reinsert herself into a narrative that she wanted to be excluded from. But that was before, in 2020, it had come out that Taylor was telling the truth the whole time. She was snaked by Kim and Kanye, and the media got on Taylor even though it really wasn't her fault. So ultimately I softened to the album a little bit insofar as I kind of took the time to realize I was wrong. Taylor was well within her right to talk about the things that had happened between her, Kim, and Kanye, especially given that she was silenced throughout that entire situation and that she had her name dragged through the mud for something that she was pretty much not at any kind of fault for and was just an innocent bystander. I just at the time was too ignorant to understand that, and I apologize for my own ignorance. And because of that, I did soften a little bit to the album, at least from a narrative perspective, but even after going back to listen to it, I still wasn't that crazy about it, and I think it's because, actually, I know it's because I didn't really enjoy the sonic direction that it took. As while it was a little more electropop influence, it also had a lot more kind of trap styles and other such genres like that. And to me at the time, it didn't really feel like the direction I had wanted Taylor Swift to go in. Not to say that she shouldn't be allowed to experiment and try new things, it's just that for me, it didn't really do all that much, and I found the sound to be a little too bombastic, a little too over the top, and it made quite a few of the tracks on here a little hard to return to. Not so much for the writing, but because of how the instrumentals sounded. And I think also at the time, back in 2017 when this came out, for much of that year I had worked a retail job where they played a lot of older Taylor Swift music on the PA or whatever, and I was actually starting to really enjoy it. There were a lot of songs being played from the Fearless and Speak Now era that I enjoyed. So hearing Taylor say the whole, I'm sorry the old Taylor can't come to the phone now, why? Because she's dead, kind of thing really didn't sit right with me at the time. I think I was in the boat of, but I want the old Taylor. The old Taylor is great. And especially after hearing the closer to the album, New Year's Day, which is still one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, I had a moment of like, where was this? Now, I know I've hung on Reputation for a while as of this point in the video, but I bring this all up to help contextualize why I enjoy Midnight so much, which is that I feel like this album right here is basically what I wanted Reputation to be back in the day. It's kind of everything I hoped Reputation would be. I think I even said in my original review of this album that I thought it was Reputation's gentler, more approachable cousin, and I obviously still stand by that, but I think that's why I enjoy it so much. Being that Reputation was the first Taylor Swift album I had heard, and it was an album I wasn't that crazy about, it kind of felt like getting off on the wrong foot. Whereas Midnight's kind of feels a little full circle for me. It feels like a, this is what I wanted all along kind of thing out of Taylor Swift. It does help that personally my favorite Taylor Swift songs are the ones that rip your heart out, throw them on the ground, and stomp on them. Songs like Ronin, All Too Well, the 10-minute version specifically, New Year's Day, Soon You'll Get Better, the title track from Evermore. Those kind of songs are my favorites out of Taylor, and it turns out that this album has quite a few heart clenchers, at least for me. Like Maroon, which I think is a perfect example of how this album kind of reminds me of Reputation, but in a lighter way, because it kind of feels like a slightly more downbeat version of a song like King of My Heart, but it's so spacious and lovely and emotional, and it's just such a beautiful track. I've gone back to it many times, and it's by far one of my favorites on the record. Just like the track Midnight Rain, which I know was a little bit unpopular in some circles, but I feel like I loved it for the reasons some were not as crazy about it, and it's that on the hook there were some pitched vocals that some people weren't all that crazy about. For a lot of people there was some unpopularity with that, but I honestly personally loved it. It was really ear-catching and it added to the minimalist feel of the song. And it also added a lot more of an emotional punch, too. And speaking of emotional punches, the track Sweet Nothing was a huge one of those. I love how delicate the instrumental is. I think it's like a little piano melody. I want to say it's a piano, that a little doom, 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 doom. It's honestly just so peaceful and lovely, and I think the vocals are absolutely beautiful. There's such a romantic vibe to the song. It's like one of those songs that when you listen to it, it kind of just feels like a warm cuddle. You know, there's all this stuff going on around you outside, but I'm running back to your sweet nothings and the things that you say. They might not be much, but they pull me in, and that's honestly kind of sweet. By far my favorite track on the album, though, is absolutely Labyrinth, and it's one that I've returned to the most. Beyond how spacey and ethereal it is alongside Taylor's absolutely gorgeous vocals, I think it's an incredibly relatable song, one of the most relatable songs on the album. Specifically the chorus with the whole uh-oh, I'm falling in love again kind of thing. And I feel like that's extremely relatable because it seems like there's so much media and so many things in life that portray love as just sunshine and happiness and rainbows. And in a way, yes, it can be, but I think people don't talk enough about how love can be extremely terrifying and nerve-wracking. I've been feeling this a lot myself lately, but think about it in the sense that when you're in love with someone, you basically are saying that you care so much about them that you want to be just as responsible for them as they are for themselves, and that's terrifying, especially when you're sitting in your room and it's pouring raining outside. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick that up, but it is pouring raining. I'm gonna power through. Anyway, you feel that a little bit harder as well when you're like a 20-something who is still trying to figure out your own direction in life. You don't even know if you're all the way there yet, but you're starting to fall for this other person. And there is kind of an element when you fall in love where there's like an oh shit, because it's a lot. Are you truly ready for something like that? There's a difference between falling in love with someone and just also kind of like really liking them to the point of having some kind of sexual attraction. When you're falling in love with someone, it means you really want to be with this person and you want to be responsible for this person and you want to be emotionally there for this person, but you might not even know if you're there yet. So there's definitely an oh shit quotient to being in love that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk enough about. And I feel like that's why I at least related to this song quite strongly. Not just because it's something I'm going through, but because I feel like it discusses something that not a lot of people really get into. That falling in love can be a beautiful thing, but it's equal parts nerve-wracking, terrifying, and anxiety-inducing. And I think that's why I find it to be such a beautiful song, and it's one that I've gravitated to ever since the original release of the album. Those are by far my favorite songs on the album, but that doesn't mean they're the only good ones. Once again, I actually enjoy a vast majority of this thing. AntiHero and Karma are the record's two big singles, and I enjoy them for a lot of the same reasons. Beyond the nice poppy sounds of them, I like how playful the writing feels. With Karma, I feel like I really enjoyed a lot of the allusions that Taylor makes to Karma, with the whole Karma is my boyfriend, Karma is a god kind of writing. And I think it makes for a fun track, even if I wasn't as crazy about the Ice Spice remix that came out of it recently. And on AntiHero, I appreciate the way the song kind of looks within itself and confronts inner toxicities. Obviously the chorus being the whole it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me kind of thing. And it's interesting how it kind of breaks down that hero worship a little bit and kind of forces fans to confront that along with themselves. You put a lot of your love and energy into this celebrity or whatever, but you don't really know them. And I do like how this kind of intricate and almost dark songwriting is put up against something that's pretty plucky and fun. I'm a big fan of those kind of songs that contradict really happy sounds with some dark writing, and this is a good example of it. Lavender Haze was another song I kind of felt had a this is what I wanted on Reputation kind of vibe, largely because it sees Taylor showing so much effortless charisma. There's a super seductive feel to it. Taylor owns it with that super catchy yeah oh yeah on the pre-chorus, and her great jumps into her falsetto on the chorus really help round things out even better. Snow on the Beach was a bit controversial when it came out, not so much because of the quality, but because of its one feature and their use, or lack thereof. The song has a feature appearance from Lana Del Rey, but when the song originally came out, and the album originally came out, many wondered where the hell was she because it barely sounded like she had a presence on the song. It got to the point where Taylor ended up releasing a version of it on a reissue of the album that literally straight up said, featuring more Lana Del Rey. Can never say she's not self-aware. No matter the version, I do really like the song for how appropriately wintry it feels and the hazy vibe as well. And once again, the writing is pretty heartfelt too. Like many songs on this record, it's much more downcast, but I think that's the reason I like it so much. You're on Your Own Kid is a song I love for its nostalgic feel and very personal writing as well. Taylor talks about how she grew into her music and her career, and while the song starts very light, it kind of starts to swell until it ends up exploding on the final chorus, with Taylor kind of fully realizing by the end that she is on her own. But by the end, she kind of realizes that she has the confidence to face that lonesomeness. And I think that writing is pretty fantastic, and it makes for another great song. Question is a classic Taste Swift song, as it exposes an ex and how empty their relationship really felt. There are some unique and very different vocal filters from Taylor, and it's another moment I can compare pretty positively to Reputation in how it nails the kind of attitude that many tracks on that record were going for, with some very charming writing as the cherry on top. Bejeweled is one of the poppier moments on the album by far, with a more staccato feel and an instrumental that almost feels like it's sparkling, for lack of a better word. It's very bouncy and it fits up nicely against everything else here, and it also features one of my favorite lyrics on the entire project. At one point, Taylor says, "Putting someone first only works when you're in their top 5, and to say that lyric hit me like a freight train when I first heard it is putting it lightly. That is fucking raw. I know that she's written a lot of memorable lines, but that one might be one of my favorites for her. Hot damn, it is amazing. And the album's closer, Mastermind, talks about her relationship with Joe Alwyn and how, as accidental as their love may seem, she kind of planned it all along. Also kind of getting at this ideology that Taylor is a very calculated artist. And as she's kind of talking to him throughout the track, it sees him end with a bit of a smile as if he kind of knew she was planning it, but was waiting for her to admit it. It's honestly a sweet song, even if her subsequent breakup with Joe makes it feel a little sad in hindsight. website. The production is minimal, much like a lot of what else is here, which makes sense for the whole Midnight's theme. But there are interesting swells here and there, and Taylor's somewhat faster paced vocal melody on the hook really rounds it out and rounds out the album quite nicely. If there was any track that I wasn't as crazy about on the standard edition of the album, it was probably Vigilante Shit. It's far from a bad song to me, but for whatever reason, I had trouble shaking that feeling of Taylor Swift was trying to make a Billie Eilish song on this one. Not that she's not allowed to do that, or that Billie owns the particular sound that that song was going for. It just kind of sounded a little bit off to me. But even then, the song is still perfectly fine, and it doesn't dampen my enjoyment of this album as a whole. Because ultimately, I understand the polarizing nature of this album and why it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's much more mellow, much lighter, and for some, it might be a little easy to get kind of bored by it. But for me, I think it was everything I could have wanted out of a Taylor Swift album. Taylor doing a more chilled out synth pop record with more emotional writing is pretty much right in my wheelhouse, and this album features some of my favorite songs from her. And while I understand that a lot of people didn't really care as much that it felt much poppier than her last few albums, I was personally happy with the change of pace. And once again, as I said at the beginning, having not really listened to albums until I started reviewing them, Reputation was my first Taylor Swift album, and that being my least favorite felt like a getting off on the wrong foot kind of moment. Even with Taylor having made several great albums since Reputation, I was still kind of sour toward that thing. But with Midnights, it feels like I got what I wanted out of Taylor all along, which might sound weird to admit because it sounds like I was asking her to punch me in the gut repeatedly, but you get what I mean. It's a fantastic album that I may argue is a bit underappreciated in her discography. Again, I know that sounds weird given the insane commercial popularity that it's had, and I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a grower for a lot of people. Maybe with some time people will start to reevaluate it and it won't be as polarizing, but either way, I think it's a great project, and I will still go as far as to say I think it's one of Taylor Swift's bests. It should be obvious, but on my rating scale, yeah, I'd give this thing an excellent rating. It's great, and like I said, even if there is the argument of it being tied to good moments in my personal life, I can take off those nostalgia blinders and even look at it again and say, yeah, I still really enjoy it. There are a lot of tracks on it I still continue to rock with and will continue to rock with. It's an amazing album, and I definitely recommend you check it out for yourself if you haven't already. Chances are you have, because a lot of people have, but I'm just saying, check it out if you haven't already. But that's just my opinion on this record. What did you guys think about it? Did you love it as much as I did, if not more? Did you hate it way more than I did? Were you just completely indifferent toward it? And what were your favorite songs off of it? I think my top 4 would have been Labyrinth #1, and then some combination of Maroon, Midnight Rain, and Sweet Nothing. But what about you guys? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And I don't know what I want my next I want to talk about video to be. This is the third one that I've filmed in the last few days, and I have a few light ideas I'm thinking about. Whether these are going to be my next videos or not, I will kind of hint at a few. For anyone that follows me that enjoys sports in the slightest, I'm thinking of doing a video on sports rivalries just because I feel like I have a lot to say about those. And given that I've already done one slightly more serious video in this series, I kind of at some point maybe want to do a video on imposter syndrome or something like that. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure yet. I want to think about this a little bit. I might actually take a little bit of a break after this one just because the amount of editing I'm going to have to do for these 3 videos is probably going to kill me. But as I mentioned on my previous community post, I have a lot of videos planned for the rest of this year. Okay, maybe not a lot, but I have quite a few pretty exciting ones that I hope you guys will be looking forward to, so rest assured you will be seeing this face quite a bit more over the next few months, whether you like it or not. Sorry, I don't know why I said it like that. I don't know. I just felt a little goofy. Let me have my fun. Anyway, stay tuned for more videos, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for waiting so patiently while I kept teasing this video for so long. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.